Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be doing a few videos here dealing with some topics, either topics that I've been talking to with other individuals like John and TCK, or things that I have been discussing through different social media groups. The first one I want to talk about for this video is actually going to be AI. And kind of a philosophical aspect to it. This was a conversation that I wanted to unpack, expound on, that was based on the last video I did with John Hogue. But before I do that, in the links of these videos, I have some new things that you can sign up to and subscribe to. One is Podomatic, which is a podcast audio play. So you can subscribe to that, or you can also follow my work on Apple Podcast. So the links are in the description of this video. So please click those links. I also have a new Twitter site, all right, or X site, for the-studio-reykjavik.com. The name of the actual X channel is Studio Reykjavik. So please click the link in the description and follow that additional Twitter feed. I also have a new channel on YouTube that's the Studio-Reykjavik. All right. So please follow me out. So now I have 7 channels. So make sure that you follow all 4 channels on YouTube, the Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. And also, if you would like to help support my work, which I think I'm providing some unique thoughts on many different topics, please help support by purchasing the products on my store, donating on my store, or being a paid member on my Patreon channel. I have different versions of membership for the Patreon. Higher tier members will get access to some of my lectures that I've done in pulmonology, and I'll be releasing a series of lectures on immunology. So you'll get access to that. You can also purchase the whole module on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, for the pulmonology, and you can do a pre-order purchase for the immunology. So you just go to the store, go to classes, and purchase the module. It's only $50. You get a lot of information for $50. So in medical school, just one of those classes would cost probably close to 10 grand. So please go to the store and help support my work in many different ways. Donations, subscribing, following me on social media, sharing my links, purchasing the products. So with that said, I want to expound on this concept of artificial intelligence and intent, human intent. All right. There is a rabbinical concept where there are 2 rabbinical concepts. All right. One is that if you dig a hole in the ground and someone falls into it, you are responsible. All right. Now, there's also another rabbinical concept that if you make a machine, this was tied to making matzah, actually. So back in the olden days, before they had machines, they would hand make it. And you have to use water and flour, and you roll it for so many minutes, and it has to be cooked for so many minutes, and to prevent it from being invalid for Passover. So there's some regulations on exactly how the matzo is made. All right. So this was done, for many, for thousands of years, handmade. Well, once the Industrial Revolution came on board, they mechanized it. All right. So there's machine matzah and there's handmade matzah. All right. Now, the rabbis started to, think about some of the problems that could happen with machine matzah. Part of the problem is that there could be residue on some of the parts of the machine as it's making the dough and flattening it and cooking it, that it perhaps may be on the machine longer than 18 minutes. All right. Some of this residue from a previous batch. So the rabbis would say, well, we can't use that machine because you have these pieces that are still on the machine that break the 18-minute rule. Well, they developed self-cleaning kind of mechanisms for each batch every 18 minutes. So that solved that problem. Then the rabbis started to think, and it's more of the Hasidic rabbis, where they were saying that, well, the question is really not about the residue, but can you put intent? So back in the olden days, before the machines, you had to have intent to make the matzah for Passover, like human intent. All right. If you're just making the matzah and you didn't have the intent that this is for Passover, then it's invalid, actually. So the person that's making it needs to have intent. So the rabbis, there's two lines of thought. There's rabbis that say that you can have intent. You can allow for these machines to make this machine matzah, and then it's kosher for Passover. And there's others that think that want to be more strict, and they only will eat the handmade matzah because their concept is that you can't impart intent in a machine. Okay, so that's the rabbinical kind of background, all right, to this this problem. Can a human put intent in a machine? All right, impart intent by wait, hold on. I don't know why it's so funny. Hold on. Trying to prevent the background noise that I hear. Okay, so the question is can you impart intent in a machine? So the line of thinking that I had this little discussion, it's a philosophical problem, and it's a very important problem, right? Let's say there's a machine. It's a simple machine that does something, and you push a button, and it has a countdown. Let's say a counter, and then it does something, sweeps your floor or whatever. Okay, so you have to push the button, and 10 seconds later, it starts to sweep your floor. Now, the question is does the machine have intent to sweep the floor? Can you impart? Well, the machine doesn't have intent, but can you impart intent? A human impart intent into the machine? All right. My line of thinking is this. Yes. All right. And how does that work? By the ramifications of your simple system. You press the button, 10 seconds later, it sweeps the floor. So you're responsible if something happens with that machine, all right, because you set it in motion. similar to the hole. All right. Would you be responsible for the hole if someone fell in it? Well, if you had a machine that you created that dug a hole, the machine isn't responsible. You'd be responsible because you designed and initiated the movement of this machine to dig the hole and someone fell into it. So you have, there's two concepts here: responsibility, like tort, responsibility of action, and imparting intent. All right. And there is a little bit of an overlap. All right. So you have the very religious Hasidic type rabbis that would say you cannot impart intent. Your religious thought of doing something and impart it on a machine to do. But yet, this is where my logic is. You have to flatten the dough, right, and cook it for so many minutes, right? And you flatten that dough with a tool, right, a roller that has spikes in it to allow it to cook quicker. So that's a tool, and a machine is a tool, right? So you're using the machine, you're rolling it, but what's actually flattening the dough is the roller, not the human. The human is setting in motion, physically setting in motion the roller. All right. And through that movement, you are imparting intent of some sort of mitzvah, the making of these matzahs for Passover. Well, so the same thing with hitting a button on a machine. If you know what it's going to do, it's just a tool. These machines are just tools. No, we haven't gotten to the AI part of this, but these machines are just tools. They're more advanced tools, and some machines are more complex. And the more complex they are, the more feedback loops they are. There may be a situation where you may have determined chaos or indeterminate chaos within the machine, especially if something's starting to break down that you didn't expect. So that would be more indeterminate chaos versus, certain things that if the machine happened to move this way, correct it. So that's determined chaos, right? So you have these machines that can have these indeterminate and determinate chaos. Well, you're making these machines, right? And you know what it will do, or you're designing it to do something. In our case, we're talking about the simple machine. You turn it on, 10 seconds later, it sweeps the floor. All right. If the machine hurts someone, then you are responsible. But the question is, did the machine have intent? Well, the machine didn't. The machine itself didn't have intent because it's not conscious to hurt someone. But the person imparted intent into the machine, and the machine is nothing but an extension of the will of the person hitting the button. So this is what I mean by imparting intent versus the machine having intent. All right. So there's this fine distinction between, does a machine have intent if it's not conscious? If it doesn't have some sort of complex logical cortical kind of thinking. All right. Simple machine. So the machine didn't have intent, but you can impart intent because you're hitting a button and it's a tool. The machine's a tool for you, just like a roller. So you can impart intent, through the roller. Well, why can't you impart intent through some sort of simple machine? Okay, so I disagree with the concept that the Hasidic rabbis have with that a machine cannot have intent. You can't impart intent, is basically what they're saying. A machine can't have intent by itself. A simple machine. But a human using that simple machine can impart intent because the human knows what that machine is designed for. right? Now, yes, there can be some chaotic things, stochastic things that can happen, right, through probability, but that's not intent, all right? So this is the reason why most Jews, even Orthodox, machine matzah is good enough for Passover, all right? But there are very, very, very particular Jews out there that will only eat handmade matzah. Now, I personally, for the first night, I have handmade matzah. The problem with the handmade matzah is that the quality is not there. It's too hard. It's a little burnt. It's a little thin in some areas, a little thicker in other areas. But it's all handmade compared to the machine matzah, where there is the quality, the consistency is much higher. So, all right, so that's the background. All right, now let's take it one step further. What about when you add in cortical computing? All right, what if you have a system, a machine that has a artificial intelligent brain? All right, and there's different levels of this. There is narrow AI, there's broad AI, there's, artificial general intelligence, AGI. So there's these different levels, all right? So we had the simple machine that couldn't do anything until the human decided to hit the button. And that human is imparting intent because the human knows what that machine is going to do, all right? Now, take the example of the Holocaust. The simple machine, the gas chamber. The gas chamber isn't at fault for the genocide during the Holocaust. It was the individuals that actually were using the gas chamber that imparted intent and therefore is responsible, right? So this is where that whole responsibility and intent come together, because if they did not have intent, if you couldn't impart intent through the machine, all right, if you can't impart intent on the machine, then the human that's turning it on is responsible, has the intent, holds the intent, all right? If you can impart the intent on the machine, all right, then you can kind of absolve your responsibility. All right. You can basically say that the machine is having the intent. All right. Well, during the Holocaust, the ones that were running the gas chambers were held accountable. They had the intent of killing these people, not the apparatus, not the simple machine, right? Because if the machine had intent, right, then it would not be the human fault. It would be only the machine's fault. So there's this idea that you can, the machines could or could not have intent, and the idea that a human could impart intent or cannot impart intent on a machine. Okay. So the human can transmit its will into the machine. And because of it's transmitting its will into the simple machine, the gas chamber, they are now responsible for the killing or the ramifications of using that machine on people, right? So this is kind of like the foundation that I'm looking at with these machines. If the machine has artificial intelligence, there is this big debate in philosophy. Does the machine absolve nations if they do atrocities with these machines that have military capability, drones? an AI drone that can self-target and decide to shoot. And let's say they were designed and launched by, let's say, the United States, and it moved, they let these machines out and it started killing the enemy, but had high collateral damage. All right, because the AI is deciding who to shoot, who to not. It's not the AI decided, let's say, for example, to shoot civilians and combatants versus collateral damage where you're shooting combatants and it's accidental that civilians are hit, either through shrapnel or direct hit. But let's say the AI decided to directly target the civilians. Is the AI responsible for the war crime, or the country that launched, designed, manufactured the machine? All right, the one that actually launch the button. Like, for example, if there was a nuclear war, right, and you had the Minutemen, turn the key and hit the button, right? Where's the intent? The intent is from the nation that, said basically turn the key and hit the button. The person that did it, not the missile. The fault of the nuclear holocaust is not the missile; it's the fault of the decision to use it. So there isn't there. So there is this the intent to harm through a simple machine like a nuclear missile, right, is still into the sphere of humans, right? So you're not absolving yourself. The point here is you can't absolve yourself from just the machine, right? So my take on this is that you have um, you have AI machine that is told by a human in some way, turning a button, voice activation, retinal activation, whatever it is, some algorithm that if this happens, do this kind of thing. And the AI launches some sort of attack, right? The humans that set the AI in motion are at fault and have the intent that's transmitted through the simple machine. All right, because the human knew that it knew that it was going to create damage. All right, but there is this autonomous aspect to the AI. The human knows that there's an autonomous aspect to the AI. Therefore, they're still responsible because they knew what it was going to cause harm, but they didn't know exactly how it was going to cause harm. They said, okay, this type of simple machine, this type of AI is autonomous. You give it some screenshots of bad guys, some terrorists. It goes through its database, hunts them down. But the way the algorithm is, it doesn't care about collateral damage. All right, and it'll hunt them down and kill without any regard to collateral damage. All right, the humans know this. They just don't know exactly how it's going to play out. So the fault is still on the human side. In terms of collateral damage, in terms of war crimes, right? Now, the transmission of intent is just that this machine, even though it's AI and autonomous, is just an extension to the human. For example, a weapon, let's say a knife, for example, is an extension of the hand. The knife is what killed the individual, technically, because it pierced the individual. But it was the use of the person using the hand. That person is at fault because the machine, the simple tool, is just an extension of the human. Okay, so the same thing here. The AI autonomous drone that causes collateral damage is nothing but an extension of the human, even though it's not physically touching the human. The human has imparted intent into the machine. The machine doesn't have intent yet because this is a simple AI. But the human had intent and it imparted the intent into the machine because the machine is nothing but an extension. All right. Now, this is a fine, some people would say, well, if it's just an extension, you don't even need to impart intent. Okay. Either way, the intent is still housed at the human level, independent of if it's physically touching the human or if it's remote, if it's distant from the human. All right. I'll just use the word imparting intent, meaning this extension. All right. This extension is what I mean by imparting intent. Intent of a machine would be self-intent, self-determined intent. Okay. So, all right, now let's take it one step further. What happens if the AI is designed in such a way where there's lots of feedback loops, it learns on itself, the human built it, and the machine decides on its own to go kill terrorists? It's just sitting in a warehouse and it just turns on, right, and decides to go kill terrorists, right? It seems that there was intent, self-determined intent, all right? Now, if the designing of this machine was designed to do harm, then the intent would still be housed in the human because it's just nothing but an extension. And the human knew that at some point there is some probability that this machine could decide to kill, for example. All right. So the intent is still that it housed in the human and this machine, a little bit more advanced, but still an extension of the human, knowing that it could cause harm. All right. Now, let's say that you create an AI where you have some sort of code of ethics where it's not to do any harm. But for some reason, some black swan thing happens within its cortical computing where it just decides to do harm, goes rogue, and overrides its ethics code. All right. But the humans didn't design it that way. It was some sort of unforeseen, unknown kind of situation that happens, a true black swan. All right. In that case, the intent would not be in the human, housed within the humans. It would be housed within this machine, this AI autonomous level. So the point I'm making is that if you graph, let's say, level of intent, right, self-intent of a machine, all right, there's going to be a number of cortical connections, cortical computing power. And as that number increases, the number of those digital neurological connections are made, more and more emergent behavior can happen. And therefore, intent will start to be more self-intent and less human imparted intent. Okay, or human extension. All right. So more electrical connections, more feedback loops, more processing power, more self-training of data, right? will lead to a system that seems to have self-determination. The moment that that system is self-determination, then it'll have self-intent and won't rely on imparted intent or extension of humans. Okay. So, so that's my take on this. It's a little bit. It depends on the system. How simple of it is just an extension of the human, either a remote extension or physical extension. A roller on matzah is just a simple tool that's a physical extension of humans, and you have an intent to flatten the matzah and make it for Passover, right? Well, you can have a machine that can make matzah and you press a button, right? Or you voice activate it and you have intent to have something happen within this space. In this case, making matzah. Or the intent, you're imparting intent into a robot that will sweep your floor in 10 seconds through voice activation, let's say, or you push a button. Okay, it's an extension of the human. AI, simple AI, will still be an extension of the human. You can impart intent, but it won't have self-intent. If you go to a higher level where the AI is making an AI, where the AI trains itself in the world it's in and decides to go rogue, even though it had some sort of ethical code not to hurt people, there's a self-determination factor that happens where now there's self-intent within the machine. All right. And in that case, machines may once in a while obey humans. And if they are obeying humans, then you have a machine, complex machine, that you can impart intent into that obeying machine. Or it's an extension of the human remotely. But in its purest form, if the machine does not pay attention to the human and has 100% self-determination, right? And it's not some sort of slave client to the human, then this machine will have intent, right? Now here, this is where it gets to kind of like crazy world, all right? As if it wasn't crazy enough. The machine that now has self-determination will have, at least from the human perspective, to seem to be passing the Turner test. All right. Now, there is going to be some people that think that these machines, especially atheists or agnostics, that would say that they're of equal thinking or superior thinking to humans, and are sentient. There is a religious community out there that would say that you can't impart the soul into the machine. See, the word impart is really important now. See, we were saying, can we impart intent? Or another term for that would be, is it an extension of yourself? All right. And we're imparting the intent of ourselves through this machine. If it's self-determining, then it has its own self-intent. All right. Right. So the religious communities out there, it doesn't matter what the religious community that you affiliate with is, the soul is part of the body, it is imparted into the body. So for us to live, we have to have obviously the energies. This is from the perspective of the religious. We have to have energies to move, right, and to metabolize, to breathe, right. But there is this other component called the soul. Now, in Judaism, it's nefesh, ruach, and neshama, right? And if you really want to get more complicated, there are different levels of the neshama and all this stuff. But there's three basic aspects to the soul. All right. And that once the soul departs, the body no longer is in existence. And this is where in the Zohar it talks about how people know within 24 hours that they are going to die, or that they may know someone that will die, because they're within 24 hours of death, even in an accident. All right. Even in, let's say, a decapitation accident or something, 24 hours before the soul has departed the body. All right. That's in the Zohar. So this is the reason why psychics have a sense that this person is going to die. Right. They sense that this person no longer has a soul, and the body can maintain itself without the soul for 24 hours. So there's this soul that departs, and the body can no longer exist within this 24-hour range. Okay. The question is that mankind, if it's making something, and it now is a machine that is self-learning, self-determining, has its own self-intent, can man impart a soul into the machine? And souls, from a religious point of view, are not something that humans can put into a system. This is the whole story of the Golem. And the Golem basically was about, you take some dust, you create this clay kind of figure, right? And this figure doesn't have a soul, but is trying to protect the village. But as it's trying to protect the village, it goes crazy. So it's kind of like Frankenstein, all right? And they have to destroy the golem. So this golem was made by incantation. It was made by taking clay or dust, mixing it with water, or taking the clay and saying words, saying certain types of words, the permutation of certain letters. And then this thing is made. All right. Now, the ones that are scientific, they think that, or atheist or agnostic will just say that's just a fairy tale. Well, there's something to be learned from what this folklore story that goes only back, I believe, to the 12th or 13th century, is trying to say. There are basic elements that can be arranged in such a way that you can make something. We use the term chemistry, right? And elements. The Kabbalists use terms like letters. And the formation of these letters create new material. Well, that's like taking elements and putting them together in different configurations and having new material. All right. So this is metallurgy, this is chemistry, all right? But they're talking it from the manipulation of letters, because the idea is that a human can create non-soul things through saying it, all right? That's the folklore, and that's kind of like the coming from the religious perspective. The atheists or the agnostics, or some of these, I'll use the term pure scientists, right? They will say, well, it's just a manipulation of material, and therefore you're making the golem, right? And that we, right, are somewhat making a golem with AI because it's using silicon, it has wires, it has code that was created to make it think and all this stuff, right? So it's a machine, right? It's made by material, right? And so there's a scientific explanation or a material explanation. The scientific explanation, that term is probably not adequate enough. There's a material aspect to the making of the AI versus the golem. There was a combination of material and spiritual by the permutation of the letters because it's trying to animate something. The problem with the golem was that the rabbis that were doing these Kabbalists that were doing this to protect the city could not impart a soul because the soul is out of the realm of human manipulation. A human can't take a soul away from a human, and a human can't put a soul in a human. That's in the realm of God. All right. So, or at least God's messengers. All right. Because the angel of death can take your soul. All right. So, but God can take the soul away. Taking it from the perspective of the religious texts. If you take the perspective of the material only, the pure scientist, then they would say we're just an amalgamation of chemical processes that emerge in such a way that allow us to exist. And once those chemical processes start to break down up to a certain point or are disrupted in some way through some sort of violent act, that organism dies. All right. So getting back to the AI. AI, once it gets to the point of self-determination, once it gets to the point where it is overriding, let's say, some sort of ethical code that was imparted in it during its early development by a human, right? It's going to do its own thing. It might make the world more peaceful. It may make the world more warlike. No one knows, right? But if you take it from the perspective of the religious, the religious lens, and you look at this, the AI does not have a soul. It is a golem. And if you take it from the perspective of the non-religious, the atheist, the agnostic, the pure scientist, the emergent behavior or existence that does not have soul, then it would be at the same level or above, maybe even super intelligent to humans. All right. So it depends on what camp you're in. It depends on if you're in the camp of the imparting of a soul into an organism, and the impart or not, that organism doesn't have a soul and you don't need to impart it. If you're in the camp, and some people that listen to this channel are in that camp, some people are not, but if you're in the camp of emergent without soul, then a species of AI will be developed and will emerge that will be superior to the human in terms of performance, in terms of physical agility and strength and intelligence, everything, creativity, everything. All right. and that that the human species actually has become irrelevant because now there's a new species that's actually much superior. But if you're in the camp of soul that's imparted by God to humans, then there is an element that the AI is missing that doesn't have a soul. Now, to prove my point that perhaps the ones that are the gravitate to the soul concept, how should I say this? There is a I kind of lost my interweaving thought there. All right, let me put that to the side and it'll come back. The AI doesn't have a soul with the ones that are in the camp of emergent behavior only. The AI would not have a soul from the religious camp because that only can be imparted by God. So humans can't impart the soul. And that was shown with the golem. Humans made something and it didn't have a soul and it had to be destroyed. So there's more evidence to suggest that this AI is more like a golem than some sort of new species. All right. Now that's kind of mechanical. But what happens if you create something from scratch that is biological? All right. And you create from scratch a human. All right. Not taking pieces of humans and mixing them together, taking a man and a female and mixing them together in a test tube, but actually starting from scratch and creating a 46 chromosome human from scratch, not taking pieces of a previous existing individual or individuals. And you create this human with that code. All right. Does the human have a soul or not? It's been 100%. The sequence is 100% human sequence created, not pieces pushed together, snapped together, glued together, or anything from people, but someone on a computer or whiteboard created a whole new sequence for a human gene. All right, from scratch. The person's human, and it's delivered. All right, let's say this technology is in such a way where it has divided its cells and created a blastocyst, and you can take this and put it into a female that is ready to be pregnant. All right. And it embeds itself into the wall of the uterus. So this 100% man-made genome of cells that are dividing and starting to morph are in this female, and it gives birth to this man-made sequence human. Doesn't have any disease. It lives for a very long time. It's super intelligent. All right. It's, and it doesn't like broccoli. All right. So it has a personality. Does that have a soul or not? We don't know because we've never have done something like that. But most likely it would have a soul. And the question is, why is that? Why is it that a machine or a golem taking the material world and putting it together, or taking the spiritual world and doing permutations and letters, create a material thing, a machine or a body, but it doesn't have a soul. It's a golem or it's an AI machine that doesn't have a soul. But yet, the manipulation of chemistry, where it allows for certain DNA sequences to be aligned, would allow for the imparting of the soul. So one question is, perhaps humans don't have souls, and that it really is an emergent behavior of chemistry. Or perhaps there's something else that is in the life force of a combination of this chemistry. Something similar. This is a really hard concept to really explain. And part of it is perhaps, these are some new thoughts that I've had, and I need to really sit down and think a little bit more on how to articulate it. God has God's name in Hebrew, it's said in a certain way, and it has many different actually pronunciations, and depending on how you pronounce it, in what sequence, depends on some sort of spiritual activation. Right? This letter sequence is called the Tetragrammaton. Individual letters have a meaning, have some sort of significance, but when put together in the Tetragrammaton, has the power of eliciting an awe, a fear of God, and permutating that can elicit certain types of Kabbalistic spiritual energies. All right. The same thing about the Tetragrammaton, if you take its parts and separate them and they're not together, they don't have the same power. They're of substance. They're of letters that have the potentiality to be put together in a certain way to allow for the activating use of the Tetragrammaton. Something very similar with chemistry, where you have or genetic code. You have, code bases that, if separated and they're left on their own, don't do much. But when they're put together in a certain way, it activates. Or if they're put together not a certain way, it does something that that's harmful. The same thing, if you permutate the Tetragrammaton in the wrong way with the wrong sequence, it causes spiritual defilement. This is why the Kabbalists don't want people to know this stuff. If you do it the right way, then there is a very positive energy that happens. So something similar in the world of biology. All right, you have these base systems that that can be put together. We call it genetic code, but you can put these systems together by a certain sequence, and it activates something that allows for potentially this soul to happen. Now, from a religious point of view, at least from Judaic religious lens, humans have souls and different levels of souls. Animals have levels of souls. Even rock has levels of souls. Now, something very similar in Buddhism, all right, and probably other religions too. This idea that there is an energy there in a system that is tied to a higher divine sphere. All right. Now, again, is this just hocus pocus from a religious point of view? And it's just the emergent behavior of these systems that are happening. But these religions they have a common theme with there's a stream of energy that is going into the material world. And that when you mix them together, it allows for this energy to flow in different ways. All right. And allow for the emergent behavior to happen. If that stream of energy was cut off, all existence would be nullified instantaneously. All right. This is the concept of Simpson, where there is a flow of energy that is just a trickle into all substances, no matter how inanimate or animate they are. And depending on the complexity of the system, human system, rock, whatever, depends on the spectrum of activity, of self-determination. All right. So, and I don't have an answer for this, but if the human creates a robot that has self-determination and creates another robot, does it have a soul? I think in this case, if it's of a material matter that is more mechanical, even though there's code and silicon and all this stuff, a silicon-based system, I don't think that there is a soul that's imparted into the AI. Now, if someone makes a biological system that's human, and we define human, let's say, by the 46 chromosomes and a certain sequence that, when they're born, they look human, right? Does that human have a soul? We don't know, because we're not really sure how to measure this soul yet, at least from, at our level of understanding of science, assuming the soul is in existence. Now, some people would say if you can't measure it yet, then maybe it doesn't exist. That's a possibility, but just because you can't measure it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So, at least, you just can't see it yet. Took a long time to prove the existence of atoms. So and it'll probably take a long time to prove the existence of soul outside of the realm of rabbinical texts or religious texts. So I don't know, but it opens up these thought processes of, can you impart intent? Can you impart a soul? The idea of extension of a machine. At what point is it no longer an extension of the machine to the human? And when you start to manipulate biological systems and you do a designer pet, let's say, designer cat, right? 100% designed with no copy paste of previous cats, but it is a cat, does it have the animal soul imparted into it? All right. So, we may be tricked by the Turner test to thinking that it has a soul, even though the Turner test wasn't about souls. It was about the perception of an artificial intelligent machine to have human level intelligence, right? The question is, there's cognition and then consciousness, and maybe there is this diving into that word consciousness. Do you have to have a soul to be conscious? Or not? I don't know. But these are philosophical thoughts to start having and talking about as we approach the AI world and as we train these machine learning algorithms. Now, the concepts that I'm talking about are farther out than tomorrow or next year, right? But they are coming faster than we think. And especially in warfare, using artificial intelligence in warfare, there's still going to be that extension of the human, and that you're imparting intent into the machine, and the machine, and you're still responsible because you're imparting intent. Remember the definition of impart. You have the intent, and you're pushing something that's allowing for the machine to do what you want it to do your bidding. You're imparting your intent into the machine. Right? But we're going to be developing systems, artificial intelligence systems, or already have developed artificial intelligence systems that once it's booted up, it's 100% autonomous. And when that is the case, where's the delineation point where you do not impart intent and it has self-intent? I mean, if it has self-intent, then based on our understanding of tort and law and ethics, the guilty from an atrocity would be of the machine, of the AI, through its self-intent and not through imparted intent by its creators. So now you kind of see the complexity of what I'm talking about here. It's pretty deep what I just said, all right? So I think I said enough in this video for food for thought, but please help support my work by subscribing to the channels that I have. Links are in the description, but also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements I have. In this video, I'm just going to talk about a few supplements. All right, I have a lot, so please go to the store and purchase the products and help support my work. This structural nanosilver toothpaste. This has structural nanosilver. It'll help to neutralize pathogens, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, and reduce that inflammation at the gum line. And by having good oral hygiene, you're going to actually improve your cardiovascular and your valvular health. Right? Many people don't understand that poor oral hygiene will lead to heart problems. I also have a great multivitamin that you should be taking every day. All right, and why do you take multivitamins? Multivitamins are cofactors for helping with metabolism. Right, we have enzymes that need cofactors, so the minerals and the vitamins that you'd be taking on a regular basis help to be cofactors for that enzymatic activity. So this is very important. In addition, it is really important, especially in this aftershock era from 2020, to boost your immune system. Take the lignans that I have on my store. It's a powder, and it'll help to boost up your immune system. It's really important to take this every day. I can't tell you enough on how important it is. Now, many people aren't listening to me, but if you follow my lead, you're going to fare better in the aftershock. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. It's a powder. You mix it with food or water. You take it every day, and it'll help to boost up your immune system. People need, in the aftershock era to bring down inflammation. This is really important, all right? This is a major mechanism of treating certain problems, all right? Bringing down that chronic inflammation. So please go to the store and get turmeric. It'll help. It's also an antioxidant, but it'll help to bring down inflammation, all right? Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. And also take it with ashwagandha. Ashwagandha will help to control the blood glucose levels in your serum. And by doing that, it's going to bring down that inflammatory response of that chronic glucose level that most Americans have. And lastly, many people do not get a probiotic. You need a probiotic. I have it in powder and in tablet form. Mix it with, with water if you're taking the powder, or food. I mix it with food. And take it every day. There's a little scooper in here, all right? It's very easy to use. It's very high quality probiotics. And by doing that, your gut biome is going to improve. Your stool consistency will improve. Your energy will improve because you'll have better absorption, and the metabolism and that communication between your gut and your liver will improve, and your gut and your brain will improve. Your mood will improve. Many problems that people have that are chronic can be mitigated by getting better GI health. So go to my store and get the probiotic. So those are just a few of the products that are on my store. And on the next video, I'll go into some more products. But please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work. You'll learn some stuff. And if you follow my lead, you'll be boosting up your immune system to fight what is transpiring in the aftershock. So please click the link, the-studio-reykjavik.com, in the description of this video and all my videos. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.